The Romans watched in amazement as Hannibal attempted to isolate Rome from its allies. Now in the summer of 216 BC, Hannibal seizes a vital Roman supply store at Cannae and blocks the route to the grain fields in the south. Goaded and threatened by hunger, the Romans march out to crush him.
Hannibal must have known that this was it. This was Rome's big attempt to exterminate him. And they thought they could do it, as they always had done, by sheer weight of numbers.
The Roman legions continue to gather at Cannae until 85,000 men face the Carthaginians. The night before the battle, Hannibal's camp is tense. His men are anxious to hear how Hannibal imagines winning against such a huge army. In his tent, Hannibal formulates his plan.
Hannibal could feel confident on the eve of the Battle of Cannae that in spite of Roman superiority in numbers, Carthaginian tactical superiority could yet win the day.
Hannibal calls his officers to his tent. Having fought and beaten enough Roman generals, he's able to guess what they'll do at Cannae.
Hannibal is counting on the Romans to make a simple frontal attack, to go ahead without thinking about the danger that they have of exposing their flanks.
The Romans rely on the brute force of their legions, legions that are virtually unstoppable once on the move. Hannibal will use that momentum to entice the Romans into a trap.
Hannibal thought, I will allow them to push us back and push us back and push us back, and I'm going to be there, so I'm going to control this very, very measured retreat. And then we're going to keep going back, and then my wings are simply going to spread, and we've got the Roman army encircled.
If the plan works, Cannae will be Hannibal's masterpiece.
Hannibal thought, I'm going to win because I'm better and I'm brighter, and that is going to finish Rome. And after Cannae, they will come to me and treat for peace on my terms.
The next morning, the Roman army marches onto the battlefield. Neither Hannibal, his men, nor any of the Romans have ever seen so many soldiers in one place. The Romans form a huge, deep block, stretching back for almost a mile.
Hannibal can see that this army is big and it's going to go forward and deliver a very strong attack, but it isn't going to be able to do anything very clever at all. It isn't maneuverable. It's a big, clumsy sledgehammer of a force.
Among the men is Scipio the Younger, now an officer. But at Cannae, he still has much to learn. For millennia to come, generals will study the inspired positioning of Hannibal's troops. In front of the massed Roman infantry, Hannibal places his allies from Spain and Gaul. They will bear the brunt of Rome's attack. Cavalry face each other on both flanks. Elite African mercenaries are held in reserve. puts himself in the front line with his Spaniards and Gauls. Here, he will be exposed to great personal peril.
Hannibal is, par excellence, the leader by example. Here is a Barca. Here is Hamilcar's heir. Does he sit on a white or a black horse on a bluff, looking down on his army fighting at Cannae? No. Hannibal is there in the center of his center, fighting at huge risk, clearly to himself, like the most common of his private soldiers.
Facing the full force of Rome's greatest army, Hannibal leads his men forward to meet them.
He advances the center of his infantry line to provoke the Romans, to lure them on, to make sure that that Roman infantry attack comes straight in where he wants it. That's where he is himself, and that's where Mago, his brother, is. They stick with the Gauls and Spaniards.
Hannibal and his Gauls and Spaniards fight to keep formation.
Their instinct should be to flee, and yet Hannibal stands there with them, steadying them, stiffening their resolve, ensuring that they don't flee. Instead, they backpedal very slowly, sucking the Romans into a trap.
The Romans surge forward.
As far as the Romans are concerned, their plan is working perfectly. There's a chance of this massive, clumsy victory that they'd wanted, so they push on. But in doing this, they've lost what little order they had. It's like the crowd spilling out of a big football match. Thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, crammed together in a very small space.
The Romans are playing straight into Hannibal's hands. His plan is working. While Hannibal, the Gauls, and Spaniards keep the Roman infantry occupied, his cavalry rout the Roman horsemen and chase them from the field. Hannibal springs his trap. His deadly African mercenaries cut into the undefended Roman flanks.
They're suddenly facing foes that are coming from different directions. They can't organize a proper fighting line to face them. Everything is chaos. Momentum from the Roman attack goes completely. The crowd has stopped, but most men in it don't know what's happening at all.
Hannibal's cavalry returns to complete the encirclement of the Roman infantry. The Romans are surrounded, but the battle doesn't stop there.
Those tens of thousands of Romans have to be killed, and they have to be killed by hand. It's a case of a long, steady, prolonged slaughter, fought very brutally, face to face, toe to toe, eye to eye.
The young Scipio manages to fight his way out. But 50,000 of his comrades do not. Hannibal and his men spend the entire day annihilating the Romans in one of the greatest battles in history. But the fierce war between the two rival civilizations is far from over. Cannae is a bloodbath of epic proportions. This is Rome's worst defeat and Hannibal's greatest victory.